Hey there, listeners. It's Catherine breaking into this episode with a special announcement. We are going to be taking a larger break than usual between shows for the next few months because I am working on a book and I want to continue to bring you the highest quality programming I can. That means I need to be bringing you programming a little less often, but still with as much passion and excitement as always. So the good news is you can always check out our back episodes. You can go to our website at theforetop.org. You can go to OPB's website and check out our back episodes there. And you can go to your favorite podcast app, such as Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, or NPR One, and listen to a whole trove, a whole library of episodes that are still relevant and I think pretty entertaining. So thank you, and we will be back with some fresh programming next month. Je pense sans cesse à toi. Hello and welcome to episode 53 of The Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot button topics in food and beverage. I'm your host, Catherine Cole. It is Feast Weekend, in which all of Portland turns into one big food and beverage party featuring tastings, seminars, dinners, and late-night drink fests, all sponsored by Bon Appetit magazine. We managed to convince a couple of visiting luminaries, or tastemakers as they're called on the Feast website, to sit down with us to record an episode here at OK Omens, a chic natural wine bar here in Portland. And since we discussed natural wine bars on episode 50, you all know what I'm talking about. Now, events like Feast are great because they bring people together. So the theme for today's show is human relationships vis-a-vis food and drink. We will start out by asking a couple of our guests what it feels like to become a food celebrity. Then we will talk about how to nourish your relationship using food and drink, and we'll move on to a primer on cocktail and dinner conversations. Here at OK Omens, I am joined by Ashley Rodriguez, food blogger at notwithoutsalt.com and author of the books Date Night In, More Than 120 Recipes to Nourish Your Relationship, and the brand new book Let's Stay In, More Than 120 Recipes to Nourish the People You Love. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you.
And Chad Murphy, an assistant professor of management at Oregon State University College of Business, who lives a secret double life as the cartoonist Lord Birthday. His book is How to Appear Normal at Social Events. Thanks for being here, Chad.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm so excited to have Zach Geballe here. Zach is the host of the Vine Pair podcast, which I just got to sit in on, and he's also a wine educator, drinks columnist, and sommelier at Seattle's Dahlia Lounge. Hi, Zach.
Hi, Catherine.
And we also have a special surprise guest, celebrity sommelier Brent Braun, and he is the partner and wine director at OK Omens and Castagna. And he will be hopping on the mic in just a second here. Now for our first course, Pinch Me, I'm a Celebrity. It is Feast Week, so we thought it would be fun to discuss that moment in one's career when one's hobby or passion goes from something personal to something very public. Chad Murphy's private doodlings made him a cult star. You should all check out his Instagram, Lord Birthday. Ashley Rodriguez is a food blogger with more than 100,000 Instagram followers. And we're joined by this segment, as I said, by Brent Braun, who's the wine director for OK Omens and Castagna. At the tender age of 30, he's just a baby, Brent was named one of Food and Wine magazine's Sommelier of the Year. Zach, I am thinking that maybe since you're the sommelier here, you might have some better questions for Brent than I do about how it feels for a sommelier who was working the floor and now is suddenly a national celeb. So I'm gonna hand the mic over to you for this segment.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And Brent, thank you so much for joining us. And I definitely can't talk about what it's like to be a celebrity because I'm definitely not one. But I would love to hear, Brent, if you don't mind, sort of how you came to this station, I suppose, and what it was like to be doing what is, sometimes not the most glamorous job and suddenly be doing glamour shoots.
It's always unexpected and surprising. I mean, I remember me and Catherine were talking about this earlier. She was the first person who actually wrote anything about what I was doing, and I think I was 25 at the time, and I got a call from her about contributing to, it was a mix magazine for the Oregonian at the time, about a Thanksgiving issue, and they were going to take a picture of me and have me write things for them. And at the time, it seemed like the biggest deal in the world that someone would take my face and put it in a magazine. And those things never kind of stopped happening. I think there's a kind of youthfulness that I permanently have in the way I approach wine. And I think with how the wine world's changing, that approach has just really resonated with people and with people my age, really young wine drinkers. But Portland's so small that on a day-to-day basis, you really just feel like a person in a little tiny 50-seat restaurant running around drinking a lot of really interesting small production wines.
So people aren't asking you to like sign their bottles when they come in here or whatever?
Excuse me, Brent, will you sign my bottle of wine?
I will,
Thank
yes.
you.
Yes,
I
definitely.
appreciate that.
But you have to drink the whole bottle in
Not
one go.
a problem.
In one go. You can't stop. I'll give you a straw to
Maybe
help
after
with
the podcast, but I'm in.
It's like Edward 750 hands or something?
It's basically like that. We usually do Edward Liter hands, but same idea. Yeah.
Gotcha. And Chad, I'm really curious too. Going, as Catherine alluded to, this sort of double life, which is I think even more interesting in some ways than having your job, your primary job, make you somewhat famous. Was there a moment in the sort of Lord birthday chronology where you kind of stepped back and said, "Holy cow, what is happening?"
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think I felt that continually throughout the process. It's a yeah, I mean, first I should say I feel a little out of place. I'm not a food celebrity. I think I made a comic about wine once, but I actually grew up Mormon, so I know literally nothing about wine. So I think that was partly why that comic worked, because it was it was totally inaccurate. But yeah, I think the entire time there was a feeling of how is this kind of internal thing that to me seemed interesting. How is this connecting to other people? And I think that was, the big takeaway the whole time for me, is that, whatever that weird sort of unusual hobby or thing that is with, inside you, if you can embrace that, like to the extent you can, I think people really resonate, because they feel that in themselves and really like seeing people pursue those things, so.
And Ashley, I'm curious too, your writing is personal and deals with this sort of deeply personal issue, and I would love to hear more about sort of this idea of taking this idea of feeding someone or some people that you love and using that as a way to express your love for them. How does it feel to have that be something that you now share with, as Catherine mentioned, like 100,000 people or more?
I can't. The thought of thinking of myself as a food celebrity, I feel like a complete and utter fraud on a daily basis. But what I continue to do, I mean, it's been a slow journey for me. I feel like an internet grandma. I've had a blog for over a decade now, which there was like 5 of us when I first started.
Was that a blog spot?
No, it wasn't. I was ahead of the curve there. But
Gotcha.
no, I think, the path has just been one foot in front of the other and following my passion and putting that out there, because I think as a creative, as an artist, like the circle of creativity is not complete until you put it out there. And so that was the natural process for me. And the fact that there are 100,000 people, it's amazing, because it's beyond, because it allows me to continue to do what I love to do and sharing food with other people. But I don't think it registers in my head on a daily basis.
Yeah, I can see that being something you have to put out of your head, because otherwise, maybe it's harder to be true to the people who are close to you about in that way.
And also, I'm a mom of 3 children, and as my mom always told me, having children makes you humble, and I never understood it until you have your own children. And so they are a wonderful just leveler of like, I have all these incredible experiences, and I go home and I'm real life. I'm a mom, and I cook dinner for them, and that's what I do. So
I have a 3-month-old, and so far being a parent has only made me tired. But
yes,
I'm looking forward to humble.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to not being tired. My oldest is 12, so
You mean I got at least 12 years to go? Goodness. Chad, I'm curious too. You mentioned sort of not having this sort of common background with maybe the rest of us in this industry, but how do you, as an outsider and viewing sort of food and beverage and having the coming here to feast and being sort of a part of the festivities, what do you hear food or beverage celebrity, like what do you even think of? What do you kind of think all of us are kind of full of nonsense?
We are all full of nonsense.
Yeah, that's the correct
tell
answer.
us that.
No, I mean, I'm a big fan of food. I'm a big supporter of all things related to food. I think, food celebrity. I'm not well, initiated into the term or the culture, but I do think, food is one of those sort of connecting things that I think in comedy and humor too, there's no coincidence that, a lot of comedians use food as part of their act. I mean, I've found a lot of, kind of advantages to integrating food into the things that I make. It's kind of an immediate, relatable topic. So, and some food is just funnier than others.
So what are the funniest foods?
Yeah, the funniest. There's some. So hot dogs are always funny. Creams are funny. Meats of all kinds. Cheese is pretty funny. Depends on the cheese.
Do you have a rating? Do you have like a list? I would love to see this charted.
What's the least funny food?
The least funny food.
Broccoli?
Broccoli. There's something about visually the word itself too that is often funny. So I think beans are funny. Cream is funny. What else? I mean, corn is somewhere in there too. But
apples are pretty unfunny.
Apples are not especially humorous.
I feel like rice is also not very funny.
Right.
Which is funny because rice and beans make so much sense together, and they're these polar opposites in the humor world, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, rice is the straight man,
Yeah.
Beans is the funny one. Rice is the straight man.
Beans are always stealing rice's thunder. That's right. Stew is always funny too. I mean, there's something about a stew that. Yeah. Is always.
But I think you'd say soup is not so funny.
Soup is pretty funny. I mean, soup jokes. Yeah, soup is actually it's a great word. It looks great on the page, or I mean, the experience of eating it is not super funny, but saying it is good.
Yeah, unless you do something very wrong.
Yes.
Right. With no spoon, you actually just put your face into the bowl and slurp. That's the proper way to eat soup.
Right.
I've never thought about this, but Brent, what's the funniest wine grape?
The funniest wine grape? Well, I mean, some, like Pinot Noir, it's definitely unfunny. It's very, very unfunny.
So serious.
Why is it so serious?
I think like Zinfandel is pretty funny.
Zinfandel's pretty funny. Gamay Noir is it's a funny grape. It's maybe more fun than funny, but
grapes are fun. Yeah. Grapes are fun. It is a funny word too. It's a good one.
Grape.
Man, I've never thought of food in this way. This is a whole new avenue. I love it.
I think I sort of discovered along the way that certain words, and especially foods, have this kind of energy around them.
Well, I can't stop saying the word soup.
Soup, right?
Soup.
Yeah.
This is like turning into a Seinfeld bit, I feel like, which is maybe not the worst thing in the world, but
yes.
What's the deal with soup?
What's going on with soup?
S-O-O-P, soup?
Brent, one last one for you real quick. So, this idea again of coming back to celebrity and trying to marry that with your job on the floor. Do you ever find yourself kind of like stuck at a table where they're like, oh, you're Brent, right? Like we want to talk to you, and you're like, I got 3 tables to deal with.
It's funny because, not thinking of myself as a celebrity at all, just thinking of myself as a person who likes wine and spends a lot of time working with it, studying it, interacting with it. I definitely get stuck at tables with people who want to talk about all the questions they've ever had because they see me as a kind of walking possible encyclopedia that they can just ask anything and get much quicker answers than sussing through Wikipedia. And a lot of times it's younger people, so I enjoy that interaction because I'd rather them get information from me, I guess, than get misinformation from wherever else. Not that I'm like some perfect source of information, but it's like this wide-eyed look about like, oh my God, teach me how I can drink better things or how I can taste this thing. And I think those interactions are really, really satisfying for me. It's a lot less satisfying if it's maybe someone older who already has their preconceived notions about wine and they're looking to kind of challenge or test. Like that interaction is zero fun. And I usually try to do everything I can to get out of those as quickly as possible.
So Brent, I'm wondering, someone who didn't grow up drinking wine, how can I enjoy it a little bit? Because right now it tastes kind of like rubber gloves to me. Is there a secret? What am I doing wrong?
To go to the natural wine thing, part of what I think has the reason the natural wine movement has stimulated people's imagination and passion so much is because there's such a unique array of flavor profiles compared to some of the more typical flavor profiles you find in commercially made wine. So, come by the bar here and we'll pour you a bunch of really wacky things that are really delicious, really wild, really unique. And I promise you'll taste things that you've never tasted before, and then it'll click and you'll get it. We're pouring a wine right now from a producer called Cutter. It's a guy named Michael Garfolo. He's a somm in town, and he's working with Dolcetto grapes from the Columbia Gorge that got smoke taint during the wildfires last year.
Oh, smoke
and
taint.
there was smoke taint in the grape skins, and you can taste it in the wine, and it's one of the most transparent things for people when they can be like, wow, I taste the smoke. I saw the fires. Like, this is how winemaking works. It's
cool.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, I have it open right now.
Can that be the bottle that I drink the whole thing?
It is, yes,
Okay,
definitely.
perfect.
Yeah, I got one open right now, too. So you only have to drink half of it to get the
Okay.
signature. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Never not funny.
I have a problem, which is I'm worried I'm not going to be able to host this next segment as well as Zach hosted the first segment. But I'm going to do my best. I'm back, and we're on to our second course, how to nourish your relationship with food and drink. So, if you're looking to pick somebody up, you go to a bar, and if you're dating, you go out to dinner in a restaurant, but then what do? Ashley Rodriguez, you are the author of Date Night In and Let's Stay In, and the concept for your books came from the weekly date night at home that you and your husband have. So I'm curious, what sort of a meal should you cook up, or should one cook up to nourish their relationship?
Yeah. So this concept sort of was born out of what I consider necessity. I mean, when my husband and I were dating and when we were newly married, every Friday night we would go out and we would try a new restaurant, and I kept a journal of all these places that we were going and all the new and exciting foods that we were having. And then children, which they're adorable, but it just made it that much more difficult for us to get out. And so I started to have this thought of, well, when they're grown and out of the house, we can date again. I was like, no, that's not okay, And so we took this concept, and one night a week we started dating at home. And I think the food in Date Night In is special food. It's date night food. Let's Stay In is more about sharing food with family and friends and those sorts of things. But to have a special date night at home, I think the best advice that I could give is to cook the food that you want to eat. To cook the food that is exciting, that makes you want to be in the kitchen cooking, because no one wants to eat the food of resentment. Am I right? Like, no one wants to eat this meal that you're like, there's so much pressure on it because you spent so many hours that you didn't enjoy the process. And so I think that's the best thing. Like, eat the food that excites you, because that love for it and that passion for it is going to fuel the conversation, the meal, and your date will feel that. And I think that's what sort of creates that special feeling in the evening.
So do you have like a go-to date night dish? I mean, I know you can cook anything in the world, but is there one dish that just makes you both smile?
Melted cheese.
Yes, I was just going to say.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is so... I mean, I have this recipe in Date Night In that is... I mean, it's raclette. Can you even call that a recipe? I don't know. It's just basically you stick a chunk of this beautiful Swedish cheese in the oven, and it melts in puddles and pools, and then you dip roasted potatoes and slices of ham and apples into it and cut it with a nice bright vinegary salad and some homemade bread or store-bought, whatever you prefer. And what's better than that?
That really is a
And a
great
glass
meal.
of wine. I mean, right, Zach?
2 at least, but sure.
Yeah.
Now, Zach, what kind of wine do you open when you have a date night at home?
Oh, that's
with your 3-month-old baby.
Well, he gets a bottle of milk, but my wife and I, I mean, I am a huge fan. We drink a lot of sparkling wine in general, and certainly for date night, it's probably champagne or some other sort of higher end sparkling wine. But we drink Cremant and other sparkling wines all the time, because I think it's sort of for the same reason. I mean, we did this before we had a kid, but there's something that is undeniably festive about opening a bottle of sparkling wine. And I think, we as a culture sometimes reserve that for too few occasions. Sometimes a Tuesday night is plenty special, and you got to kind of create that celebration in your own life. And if opening a bottle of sparkling wine is the way you do that, as it is for my wife and I, then that's what we do.
And can I also say, in terms of logistics, if you want to make out afterward, sparkling wine is great because it's got the acidity and the bubbles. It cleans your mouth. Don't drink a big red tannic wine, because then your mouth is all like gross and fuzzy, right, Zach?
Plus, if you spill it, it makes less of a mess.
Totally.
Which can happen when you're making out.
And you don't want purple teeth.
Well, that part, when you get to be married for a few years and have a kid, the purple teeth are not a turnoff.
It's almost better. It's almost better.
Chad, how many kids do you have?
4 kids, yeah.
So how do you keep the love alive? What do you guys cook at home?
What do we cook? Yeah, I mean, there's a, let's see. There's a lot of burritos. There's a lot of, what was it called? Texas toast? Is that a thing?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, there's I sound, these are very fancy options that Ashley's recommended. I think I'm not quite at that level.
You can just pour some cheese on that Texas toast and call it date night.
Just put it in a bowl, eat the cheese straight. That could work too. We're sort of working on that, but I think, a good fillet of something, is always a good idea.
I will say I was admiring your work before this episode, and I was reading your comic on how to tell someone you have a crush on them.
Yes, yes.
I love the romantic nicknames to call your lover.
Yes.
Alfred Hitchcock, Showgoat in drizzled oil, Juicy Cassette. And Bitsy Plump Wonder. One of my kids is Elizabeth, and we call her Bitsy. So Bitsy Plump Wonder. I'm just going to call her that from now on.
Okay, yes.
That's amazing.
That's good. That's good.
That would totally turn me on if somebody called me that.
Bitsy, yes. Plump Wonder. Juicy Cassette.
I'm gonna. We're gonna have to. I'm gonna have to use these before my wife hears this podcast. She thinks I came up with them on my own for at least a few weeks.
Well, I'll give you some others. There's others I can.
Oh, good.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to. Yeah. Let me think of that. I'll look at the outtakes.
Well, okay. In the meantime, I did look up. I love all those scientific studies that how do they get funded? I mean, they should be researching climate change, and instead they're doing these stupid scientific studies about which foods kindle romance.
Oh.
So apparently, according to Psychology Today, sweet foods increase your dopamine levels. So eat dessert.
I don't think I would have had to do research to tell you that one.
And then
You're a scientist.
Yes.
I agree. And then Time Magazine says women are more open to romance on a full stomach. But I didn't find anything about oysters, which was weird.
Well, I think I've always felt like the oyster thing is less about the actual effects of eating the oyster and sort of the willingness to try something that's on the face of it disgusting, which is kind of true of romance too.
Breaking boundaries, right? Boundary breaking foods, sure.
All right, Ashley, I want to hear some more classics, some more tried and true. I love the raclette.
Yeah, the raclette is really good. It's really. The food in that book is the food that I want to eat. So there is actually a fried chicken sandwich that is based off of Pine State Biscuits here in Portland. It's a fried chicken, which I'm not from the South, but I must say I think my fried chicken is quite delicious. It's on a black pepper biscuit with grainy mustard, bright pickles, and it's drizzled with honey. So you get some of that sweetness that we now know leads to romance, and then you also get full,
pickles.
Which apparently also, I don't know, but fried chicken and biscuit might lead me to a nap instead of romance. I don't know, but it's very, very delicious.
I it's funny. I was just thinking about this question of what are the things that I cook at home for my wife and I, and I gotta say it's not a date night thing exactly, but I feel like it's this incredibly romantic, not romantic, but soulful and loving thing is just a really good roast chicken. There's something about the simplicity of it, but also the undeniable, who doesn't really unless you don't eat meat, which fair, but if otherwise, who doesn't love a really delicious roast chicken? It is the best food to make when you are maybe earlier in the dating stage, if you're going to cook for someone, I feel because it's hard to mess up and everyone likes it.
But the question is, do you pick up the drumstick? Because the fingers.
Again, yes. You gotta, it's just like the oysters, you gotta show a little willingness to get messy.
Okay. Because I think prawns are a terrible idea because then you have fingers that smell like shellfish shells.
Yeah, that's true. I would say there are foods to be avoided, for sure.
But that's the thing. Are we talking first date food, or are we talking 10, 15 years into the marriage, where it's that fried chicken sandwich, my husband and I both said as we were eating, we're this is not a first date food. This is you're shoving it in your mouth, and it is messy, but that is true love right there. If you can have red wine teeth, shove fried chicken in your mouth,
fingers that smell like prawns,
that's
love. I agree.
It's the real thing. There's got to be a stages thing, a food per stage of the relationship too. There's the chicken stage, which we've established, roasted chicken stage, and then the purple teeth stage. That'd be an interesting book to write. If somebody could write that, please.
Well, I feel like Ashley might have some time. She just finished her last book. So
which food goes with which stage?
Yeah, the 120 stages of dating.
So so much free time with those 3 children.
Yes. Chad, only if you illustrate it for me.
Yeah, happy to, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I can do some wine pairings if we need.
Yes, we definitely need that.
I feel like I should break in and say, once again, we are at OK Omens, and this is a working restaurant. So if you hear clattering in the background, it's all part of the wonderful texture and atmosphere here. So I apologize, but I think it's kind of fun to be.
Yeah, so we call it, in the business, we call this just rich, natural sound.
Yes. Well, speaking of rich, natural sound, let's talk about cocktail parties. Moving on to our third course, how to make conversation at a dinner party or cocktail party. We've all been there, that awkward business dinner or that wedding table at which you're seated with 5 strangers. Lord Birthday, help me out here. Can you share some of your best zingers for getting a conversation started in awkward social settings that revolve around food and drink?
Yeah, so... I will say first I copied and pasted this question from the email into my notes, but it auto-corrected zingers to singers. So I've got a long list of my favorite singers if you want to. It's actually just 3. I mean, it's Celine Dion, William Shatner, Tony Robbins, just all the legends.
Wait, Tony Robbins is a singer?
Probably not, but if he sings, he's probably amazing at it. So I'll put him in there. I think, in getting a conversation started, so I think you want to just avoid, the bad and scary topics like, goblins, ghouls. You don't want to talk about that. None of that garbage. Usually just want to talk about nice things, right? So like life, love, murder movies on Netflix. Which they're great because there's always a murder and there's always somebody that solves it, and they're not making enough of those these days, so I'm always happy to see those on Netflix. That's usually what I do. Just focus on the good things. You don't want to say the bad, scary things. Avoid scary things.
All right.
Frightening things.
I have to say, once again, I was looking at your work before we came in here. I don't even remember which comic this was from. It was a question: when I go to a restaurant, can I touch the waiter?
Oh my gosh, I saw that one. That's
No, you cannot touch the waiter.
It's a common question. Yeah, I get asked that. I think people assume because I have a king, sort of wise Solomon kind of persona that I would answer the question, know these answers, and people ask that one a lot. I'm surprised. It's very surprising. You can't do that though. You can't.
It's a really important message that you're sharing with the world.
It's really...
That is vital information.
Who else, is going to do that, is going to convey that.
And don't touch the psalm, right, Zach?
Yeah, we're like, we're there to be seen but not touched. So.
Yeah, no touching. Right.
So wait, Zach, when you are approaching a table and there's just like utter silence and people are staring daggers at each other and you have to sell these people some wine, like what do you do to break the ice and get everyone to talk?
Oh my God. Well, now I'm going to start reciting my list of favorite singers that I got from Chad. But no, I mean, the approaching the table is always a little bit awkward, like inevitably, unless they are actively looking for you. But yeah, when something is going wrong at the table, my goal is to get in and get out as quickly as I can, because in the end, I can't really fix, no matter how great my suggestion of wine to go with their meal, it's probably not going to fix whatever is wrong more globally in their life.
You can't match tears.
I don't. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'll come back to you with a pairing for the tears of broken hearts or whatever. But I think what it really comes down to is just like trying to get back on some kind of focus, kind of get people to be like, okay, maybe this is not the best meal you've ever had in your life. Maybe things are going wrong in your own life. And it can also just be in general when people are, there's a high energy situation. Sometimes it's hard when people are super excited, people are, celebrating something big and, they want to be there in that moment. And I certainly don't want to get in their way, but I do want to get their wine order. And so, it's really about just trying to wait for a natural break in the conversation if there is one, or very gently inserting myself and trying to sort of just like, hey, I'm here, let me know if you need something. If not, I'll step away.
I'm always excited to see the sommelier at my table.
Well,
I feel like
too.
you have the power to like turn that negative conversation or that negative moment into something positive, I mean, a good glass of wine can really fix it. And if they're celebrating, you're just making it all the more better.
Yeah.
You're the superhero of the restaurant.
Like a magician.
You are a magician.
I should start wearing one of those pointy hats, I feel like.
And a cape.
Well, capes are dangerous in restaurants. It's just like being a superhero. You don't want to wear a cape.
Wait, so Zach, when you go to a cocktail party off the job, do you feel like you have better skills because you're so used to walking up to tables and breaking into the conversation?
It is an undeniable fact that my wife sometimes appreciates and sometimes laments that, like, when we go to events or parties, people inevitably just want to talk to me. Some of it is because what I do for a living is interesting to most people, but some of it is also just you learn when you talk to people for a living in that setting that you have to be able to find a point of connection. And so often I end up talking about wine, which is fine. Sometimes I end up opening wine, whether or not it's my house or my party. And
that happens to me too.
Yeah, and it's like,
hand me the bottle.
yeah, it's always kind of like, oh wait, your glass is empty. Let's get some wine. Like here, have this. Like, you know, it makes me uncomfortable to see people with empty glasses, even when I'm not getting paid. No
wonder why you're so popular at parties.
Well, you know, you gotta know. It's like, just like I'm sure for you, Ashley. You know, if you're the one walking out there with a beautiful tray of appetizer or something, like, people are going to be happy to see you, and I'm generally got a bottle in hand, or 2 or 3, and that generally makes people happy too.
Yeah.
So Ashley, I fall into the trap where I go to events and I just end up talking about my kids with other, how are your kids? Oh, how are your kids? And it's like, we're interesting too. How do we get out of that rut of just always talking about our kids, or is it impossible?
Oh, man. This conversation about awkward conversations is making me feel awkward because I'm a self-proclaimed carnivore at parties. I find the corner and I will just stay there, and like, I love to observe, but it is a skill that I would love to get better about, just finding that point of connection. I love that you said that, Zach, because that is something that I think is so incredibly valuable, and it is an incredible skill, and I'd love to get better about that. I don't know. I think most of the cocktail parties and the events and stuff where these conversations are happening are surrounded by food, so I don't end up talking about my children too much unless it is otherwise brought up, because I don't know, in that moment I'm just so much more excited to talk about food and drinks. I love you, children. But, that is maybe the understood knowledge that if we're at this food event, we all love food and wine, or...
Oh, yeah.
So then it's like we have that common ground and we can talk about, and I always love hearing about what was the latest meal that you loved or felt super inspired by, or let's hear about that.
Oh, that's a good question to just throw out when there's the awkward silence.
I don't know what this says about me, but I like to ask people about their worst recent dining experience. Oh. I feel like they're more fun. Not that it's not great to hear about someone has a really nice meal, but everyone's like, I had a great meal story is kind of the same, and like, you can go like, oh, what's that restaurant that you had a nice time at? But I love to hear it when something goes wrong, in part because, like, sort of the masochist in me is like, oh man, like, I can imagine what it would have been like to be either having that experience or serving this person or being involved in that, and also because it's for me as a service professional, is a tremendous learning experience, because it's always amazing to me what the things people pick up on and what they dislike in their dining experience that sometimes I'm baffled by, and I want to tell them, like, that seems like a really strange thing to be nitpicky about, but hey, if it bothered you, then I should probably be aware of it.
Those are both great questions, because I could definitely rattle off my favorite and least favorite meal lately. And you're right. Yeah, sometimes it's the soundtrack. It's like, God, I love that restaurant, but the soundtrack was terrible.
Yeah.
It's just like one little thing.
I had a server recently, and I won't say where it was, but I did have a meal recently where the server smelled like aggressively of cologne, and it was just like, I haven't had that experience in a restaurant in forever, and it was so weird because it's such a faux pas. I mean, it's really like a thing that you should not ever do in this industry, and I couldn't believe that this person was allowed to like wait tables, because I could smell him even when he wasn't at the table, which was unfortunate.
Oh, wow.
Sorry about that. That was me.
I knew you looked familiar.
I don't
Chad.
even work at your restaurant. I just was passing through. I'm sorry about that.
Chad, did I read that you come from a pretty conservative, traditional Mormon family? So what is it like when you go back home for family events, trying to like make conversation, and they're like, we've noticed you have this really absurd thing you do on the side that's sometimes a little graphic and whatnot.
Sure.
How do you How do you smooth over those conversations?
Yeah, some of those you just have to eject from because they're, but no, I mean, I should say, that's true. Yeah, I did grow up, very Mormon. Most of my family is still Mormon. But this is also, I think humor is genetic too. So it's, they understand on, I think on a pretty deep level, some of the humor and, where it's coming from. But, yeah, I mean, I think there are those some of those moments, and I don't think there's a very easy answer. You just have to try to just talk about YouTube videos or something else.
Tony Robbins singing.
Tony Robbins, yeah, we can always bond over Tony Robbins, his fake singing career. But
so many people are going to be Googling Tony Robbins' singing career and find nothing.
Sings the hits.
That's what I was going to do as soon as we finished recording, actually.
He's got a Christmas album
Quick,
coming
throw
out.
a YouTube video up there, bro.
Oh, well, you're also a professor of economics, correct?
Yeah, I'm in the business school, yeah.
Do you get economic advice from Tony Robbins' talk?
Maybe. Yeah, that's where this is coming from. I've been reading all of his work lately. I'm really impressed. No, I mean, it is weirdly, I think, an inspiration for, Lord Birthday. The persona is kind of a sort of self-important, professed expert who's, dispensing life advice, which is wrong and it doesn't work, but sometimes there's something that's kind of helpful. So I do actually maybe that's where that's coming from. That has nothing to do with our topic, but yeah, I like some of those kind of guru figures, Anyway.
I wonder, do your students how many of your students are aware of Lord Birthday, and do they do they want you to I don't know, draw them comics on their assignments or
on their exams?
Yeah.
Actually, so I'd been anonymous for a long time, and it's just in the past year that students have started to know. So I do talk about it, and I notice they all follow me right after the first class, and it is a little bit strange because I have to. Sometimes they'll message me on Instagram, about, assignments or
oh no.
Yeah, or they'll be I'll post something and they're like, "Hey, professor, that one was pretty good." And I'm like, I got to keep some separation here. You're not kind of messaging me on, that's not going to work.
Weren't you outed on NPR?
Yeah, so on Invisibilia, we did a story, let's see, that was about a little over a year ago. And yeah, I was, I thought it wasn't, against my will. Lulu Miller I'd gotten to know a little bit, and I sort of had the idea, and she worked it in. But yeah, that was quite surprising. I think I underestimated how many people listened to Invisibilia because I was I knew it was a popular show, but it was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. So.
And now here you are at Feast, a tastemaker.
I guess.
A year later.
There was an error in the algorithm that invited me. We don't know how I got here, but
it was because you talked about soup and they thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, they're like, "We love that soup guy. Get that guy in here."
It was the cheese.
The cheese man.
Speaking of soup and cheese, I think it's time for our dessert course, in which we each go around the table and share something foodie or beverage related that we've been enjoying this week. It can be anything random, just something you want to share with our listeners. I will go first. Maybe I'm getting old, but lately I've noticed that I can't stand loud music anymore. And I tend to get around town riding my bike, and I can't stand it when I'm riding past a street fair or a bar where the music is so loud that I can't hear myself think. So my recommendation to anyone who's visiting Portland is go to one of Portland's urban wineries, Teutonic Wine Company, because they always have live jazz, and it's always a very small.
Nice.
Wow.
And they're very hipster, natural winemakers, but they'll just have 3 or 4 musicians, and they don't turn it up too loud, so you can just sit there and sip your wine and enjoy some classic jazz. I'm definitely old, but drinking some elegant German-style Riesling and listening to jazz is pretty much the best thing I think you can do on a Sunday.
I love that.
So that's my dessert.
Wow.
Lord Birthday, did you bring some dessert to share?
I did. So it's music related too, just kind of piggybacking on the jazz. Someone the other day introduced me to this band called the Beatles. And have you heard? Has everybody heard them? So good. They're so many good songs.
Tony Robbins inspired them, right?
Yeah, I think Yeah, he's somehow one of
Yeah.
them is one of his oldest son.
I think I heard that.
I think,
too.
and I've been listening to the Beatles the past week, and I'm really blown away. So I would definitely recommend. I mean, you can
Check
pick
them
almost
out.
any.
Are they on Spotify?
I think they just got on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's amazing how familiar some of their tunes sound.
It's wild. Yeah, it's wild. My favorite I think is Yellow Submarine. That one is just it's great.
Good cooking song.
Classic. It's about a submarine. And
Submarine Sandwich?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's open to interpretation. There's a lot of different.
It's true. I did hear that. I think John Lennon was a big fan of yellow mustard, so I think that's kind of where it all comes together.
Right.
Okay. And he's in the Beatles.
I believe so.
I was looking at the Wikipedia last night. It's interesting.
It's a surprisingly long Wikipedia entry for a new band.
Yeah, I think they started on like a small indie label in Portland, and then they're doing great. Proud of them.
Great retro look too. Well, Ashley, what did you bring for us for dessert?
Oh, man. Okay, so I actually just recently got back from a trip to Alaska, and we were there just learning all about the wild foods there and cooking over a fire, which is one of my other passions and related to food. And we were fishing with a commercial fisherman team called Drifters Fish, Nellie and Michael, and she prepared over the fire this salmon that it was so incredible. So she filleted the fish whole, so you get these 2 large, beautiful fillets, and then you have the carcass. And the carcass still has all this incredible meat left on it. So she threw that directly onto the grill over the fire, and it slowly cooks. And to finish it off, she threw fresh parsley and preserved lemon. And we didn't even allow it to come off the fire before we just started picking at the carcass. And then one lucky diner gets the salmon cheeks, and you have all the little bits, and you eat every single bit of that fish. And it was incredible. So I'm all about cooking that salmon carcass right now. We had it a couple times just in Alaska, and it was like every time it blew my mind.
Love a good carcass.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
While listening to the Beatles?
The Beatles,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like carcass should show up on more menus. I feel like.
Hey, it's all about zero food waste.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love it. Zach, what did you bring for us?
So this is a time of year when I think like the weather is just starting to change into that kind of beginnings of crisp fall. And it's a time of year when I love to start drinking red wine. I'm a white wine drinker first and foremost, but it's something about this season makes me really get into reds. And the varietal and the wine that I've been into lately is a varietal that I can't figure out why it's not become a little more popular. And it's an Austrian varietal first and foremost, Blaufränkisch or Lemberger, as it's sometimes known. And it's weird because like a lot of other similar grapes have become really, really popular, even in sommelier circles. Things like Norella Mascalese or Zina Mavro, these sort of lighter colored but sort of tannic and acidic, savory reds. But Blaufränkisch can't get any love. And I love it because it's got this cool, interesting history in Washington, where I live, and there's some producers up there who still grow it for reasons that probably have more to do with madness than commercial viability. And you can certainly find some really interesting examples from Austria. But it's this beautiful kind of fall, crisp, tart, but smoky and spicy and savory red, and they're super affordable and just delicious. And it's the kind of wine that I really want to drink this time of year, and probably by the time we hit winter, I'll be past it. But for now, it's what I want.
Yeah, it's delicious. Sometimes I wonder some of these wines that have longer Germanic names, maybe people are just afraid to try to say them.
Yeah, it's not hard. Blaufränkisch is not challenging, but yes, it looks weird on a page. There's like an extra K in there that no one can figure out, and but give it a try. You don't have to pronounce it. You can make the sommelier say it. You can just point at the list.
You can have Brent Braun say it. Speaking of, I would like to thank our wonderful panelists today, and I will start with Brent Braun, who is now busy doing his job as the wine director for Castagna and partner and wine director here at OK Omens, an amazing natural wine bar here in Portland. He was also the Food and Wine Magazine Sommelier of the Year. So thanks, Brent. I know you're busy. And Zach Geballe, host of the Vine Pair podcast, as well as a wine educator, drinks columnist, and sommelier at Seattle's Dalio Lounge. Thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I'm trying to go in the order of where everyone's sitting. Ashley Rodriguez, food blogger at notwithoutsalt.com and the author of the books Date Night In, more than 120 recipes to nourish your relationship, and the brand new Let's Stay In, more than 120 recipes to nourish the people you love. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
And Chad Murphy, an assistant professor of management at Oregon State University College of Business, who once again, people, lives a secret double life as Lord Birthday. His book is called How to Appear Normal at Social Events.
Thanks for having me.
What a fun show. Thanks for being here, you guys. Today's episode was recorded in the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon, but not in the studios of OPB. Today we were at the natural wine bar, OK Omens. We are always and forever grateful to sound supervisor Stephen Cray. Special thanks today to our traveling audio tech, Keelan King, who showed up with all the mics and the equipment and recorded this episode. Our editor is Alex Ward, our assistant producer is Izzy Kramer, and our theme music was performed by the incomparable wine importer, Kermit Lynch. You can read more about us on the OPB website, or you can visit our dedicated website at the4top.org and listen to back episodes. Do you want to donate to our James Beard Award-winning show? You can do so at our website, the4top.org. But if you're not in a place to donate right now, please rate us on iTunes, subscribe to The Four Top on your favorite podcast app, including NPR One, or just tell your friends about us. And we love to hear your opinions about the topics we discuss. Tweet us, post on our Facebook or Instagram feed. And if you're feeling shy, please email us at the4top@gmail.com because Izzy Kramer literally lives for listener feedback. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now. Nuit blanche, nuit blanche, nuit blanche.